Have you ever, like, really tried to stick to a good habit? Or maybe, kick a bad one?
Oh, absolutely.
And it just feels impossible sometimes, like you're fighting something invisible.
Yeah, like there's this undercurrent just pulling you away from what you want to do.
Exactly. It really makes you question, how much control do we actually have over ourselves?
It's a universal struggle, isn't it?
Huh.
And what's fascinating is that ancient wisdom traditions actually dive deep into this exact feeling.
They really do. And that's our focus today. We've got these sources, commentaries actually, on verses from the Dhammapada.
A foundational text?
Right. And they tell these two linked stories about five friends, basically exploring why self-control is so darn hard
Yeah.
and maybe what stops us from really hearing wisdom when we encounter it.
So our mission here for this deep dive is to unpack these stories, see what they reveal about, the deep roots of why we struggle with habits and focus.
And then connect it back. How do these ancient ideas resonate with the challenges you face right now?
Let's get into it.
Okay, story number one. The setting is Jetavana. Picture the sort of well-known ancient monastery garden, a place where teachings often happened.
And our characters are five lay followers. So not monks, just regular people trying to live, let's say, more skillful lives.
And each one had decided to focus on keeping just one of the main training rules.
Right. Like maybe one person said, okay, my focus is no killing. Another might pick no stealing. Someone else, no lying, and so on. Just one rule each.
Simple enough, you'd think. But then they start arguing.
Ah, the conflict.
Yeah, each one started insisting that their specific rule, the one they were working on, was actually the hardest one to keep.
Which is so human, right? Whatever you're wrestling with always feels like the biggest mountain.
Totally. Your particular challenge feels uniquely difficult.
Exactly. So they can't agree.
So they take their argument to the teacher, to the Buddha. They lay out their individual struggles and this whole disagreement.
And how does the teacher respond? Does he pick one?
No, he listens to them all, very carefully, apparently. And then he just states, quite clearly, that all of the rules are difficult to protect.
Ah, so he doesn't validate one person's struggle over another's.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He basically says the difficulty is inherent in the act of restraint itself, not specific to which rule you pick.
That's a key point.
And this leads right into verse 187 from the Dhammapada. The teacher recites this verse, and it lists the 5 actions these rules cover.
Okay, so what are they?
The verse mentions taking the life of living beings.
Killing,
Right. Speaking falsehood.
lying,
Taking what is not given.
stealing,
Going to another's wife.
sexual misconduct, basically.
And indulging in drinking intoxicants.
The 5 core precepts, essentially.
Yes. And the commentary on this verse spells out the consequence. And it's pretty immediate and stark. It says engaging in these actions is like digging up one's own root right here in this very world.
Wow, digging up one's own root. What does that mean in this context? Is it about future karma?
The source makes it clear it's not just future karma. It's about destroying your foundation now.
Okay.
Like, imagine losing your fields, your property, your savings, the very things that support your life. You end up, the text says, helpless and miserable. It's about ruining your stability in this life.
So it's immediate worldly ruin, not just some abstract future consequence. That's powerful.
Very. And the verse itself has this direct address, "O good man, know this," followed by this warning. It warns about letting evil natures, papadhama, be unrestrained, asanyanatta.
Okay, evil natures and unrestrained. How are those explained? Well, evil natures here are specifically identified as greed and aversion or hatred, the unwholesome roots.
Right. Loba and dosa.
Exactly. And unrestrained means just that lacking control over your body, your speech, your mind, letting these forces run wild.
And the warning is,
The warning is pretty direct. Don't let these unrestrained and negative states cause you suffering for a long, long time.
so the difficulty of keeping even one rule connects back to these internal forces. Greed and aversion, being fundamentally uncontrolled, unrestrained.
Precisely. The root of the problem isn't the external rule, it's the internal lack of restraint driven by these powerful states.
Okay. And how does this first story end?
It actually ends on a positive note.
Hmm.
After hearing this teaching, understanding this connection, the 5 friends all attain stream entry.
Stream entry. That's a big deal, isn't it? Like the first major step on the path.
It is. It signifies a fundamental shift in understanding, an irreversible step towards liberation. So realizing the true source of the difficulty, these internal unrestrained states and their immediate impact, was transformative for them.
Which raises the next obvious question, really. If keeping just one rule is tough because of these internal forces, why? Why is self-control, why is changing our patterns so fundamentally difficult?
What's really getting in the way?
Yeah. What stops us from even hearing the wisdom that could help? And that brings us perfectly to the second story.
And it features the same 5 friends. They've come back to the teacher.
This time they want to go deeper. They want to hear the more profound teachings.
So the teacher begins this discourse. And the sources, they use these incredible images, like a huge thundercloud building ready to release rain or a celestial river flowing down.
Yeah.
You get the sense of something really powerful and important being shared.
You'd think everyone would be hanging on every word.
You would. But Ananda, who was the Buddha's attendant, notices something odd about the 5 friends.
What's happening?
Well, while this profound teaching is unfolding, one friend is fast asleep,
Tippy?
sound asleep. Another is just like scratching the dirt on the ground with his finger.
Right.
A third is randomly shaking a tree nearby.
Shaking a tree.
Yeah. The fourth is just staring up at the sky. And only one of the 5 is actually sitting there, listening attentively and respectfully.
Wow. That's quite a picture of distraction. Anand must have been puzzled.
He was. He points it out to the teacher, like, what's going on here? How can they be behaving like this during such an important teaching?
And what does the teacher say?
This is where it gets really interesting. The teacher essentially says, you don't understand the depth of their conditioning. He explains that he knows them, and their current behavior is deeply rooted in habits from past lives. Hundreds of them.
Past lives. Okay, tell me more. The commentary gives details.
It gives very specific details. For 500 consecutive lives, apparently. The one sleeping now, he'd been a snake, always resting coiled up.
Okay, I can see the connection.
The one scratching the ground,
Yeah.
earthworm, constantly interacting with the soil.
Right. Makes sense.
The tree shaker, a monkey, always grabbing and moving in trees.
Huh.
The sky gazer, an astrologer, always looking up at the heavens.
And the one listening.
For 500 lives, he had been a Veda master. Someone deeply immersed in studying, comparing, and listening intently to complex texts.
Whoa. So the idea here is Bhubbachinivasa, the immense power of deeply ingrained past habits. These patterns are so strong they're manifesting now, overriding even this profound teaching for 4 out of the 5.
Exactly. Your history, your accumulated tendencies are shaping your present experience and capacity to engage.
But the teacher also mentioned the teaching itself is difficult to hear. Is it purely the listener's habits, or is there something about the teaching too?
It seems to be both. The teacher explains that the core concepts, words like Buddha, Dhamma, the teaching itself, Sangha, the community, these are terms that beings simply haven't encountered for incredibly long periods. We're talking hundreds of thousands of eons.
Eons without even hearing these words.
Yeah. The commentary says they've spent beginningless time in samsara, in the cycle of rebirth, hearing only what it calls tirachanakatha.
Tirachanakatha. Animal talks. What does that actually mean? Literal animal speech.
No, it's a metaphor. It refers to talk that's purely mundane, worldly, focused only on survival, pleasure, gain, loss, gossip.
Like endless chatter about trivial things. Food, clothes, relationships based only on surface stuff, entertainment.
Exactly. Talk that keeps you completely bound to the cycle, never pointing beyond it.
Right.
Because they've been immersed solely in that kind of conversation for so long, the commentary suggests their minds are just naturally inclined towards superficial distractions.
Like singing and dancing at drinking parties, as the source mentions.
Right. That's their default setting. So hearing something deep, something truly profound, feels alien. It's hard for the mind to even tune into it.
So it's like eons of conditioning towards the superficial makes the profound seem uninteresting or just hard to grasp.
Ananda must have asked then, what specifically stops them?
He did. He asked, what are the fundamental obstacles? And the teacher names the core hindrances, the big ones. Let me guess. Attachment. Attachment or greed?
Yeah.
Raga. Yes.
Aversion.
Aversion or hatred. Dosi. Correct.
Delusion.
Delusion or ignorance. Mahas.
And craving.
And craving. Insatiable desire. Tanha. Those 4. The usual suspects, but clearly powerful ones. And this leads to verse 189, which uses some intense analogies for these.
It really does. The verse says, there is no fire like passion, no grab like hatred, no net like delusion, no river like craving.
Okay, let's unpack those analogies based on the commentary. They sound really descriptive. First, passion, raga, is like a fire, agi.
Yes, but a specific kind of fire. It burns from within, the source says.
Yeah.
You don't see external smoke, but internally it consumes beings completely, leaves nothing behind, no ash.
Wow.
And here's the really chilling part. Unlike a normal fire, or even, say, a world-ending cosmic fire, the commentary stresses that the fire of passion never stops burning. It's
No.
constant, perpetual.
An internal, unquenchable fire. That's a terrifying image.
Okay.
Okay, next. Aversion or hatred. Dosa is like a grab or a seizure. Gaho.
Yeah, think of something that gets a hold of you and won't let go, like a python or a crocodile, but the source says their grip holds you just for this life. The grab of hatred, though, is described as absolute. Continuous, it can hold you across lifetimes, it's relentless and doesn't easily release its victim.
An inescapable grip. Then delusion, moha, is like a net. Chala.
This one's maybe more intuitive. It binds you, it encircles you, traps you in ignorance, stops you from seeing things clearly, like being caught in a snare you can't see properly.
Makes sense. And finally, craving, tana, is like a river. Nadi.
This analogy is really insightful. We think of rivers, even huge ones like the Ganges, having seasons, right? Sometimes full, sometimes low, sometimes dry.
Sure.
But the river of craving, the commentary says, is always deficient, always empty. Nikasunava. It's defined by its inability to be filled. Duplanthethina, hard to fill. No matter what you pour into it, it's never enough. It remains fundamentally unsatisfied.
That image of the unfillable river, that just perfectly captures that feeling, doesn't it? Always wanting more, chasing the next thing, never feeling truly content. It feels incredibly modern, but it's ancient.
It's a timeless description of that core human experience of insatiable desire. And maybe unsurprisingly, the end of this second story reflects these obstacles. Remember how only one friend was listening attentively?
Yeah, the former Vita master.
He's the only one who attains stream entry after this teaching.
Ah, so the others, caught in those deep habits, swayed by those powerful forces, the fire, the grab, the net, the river, they couldn't fully take in the teaching's benefit right then.
It seems their internal state, their conditioning, created too much interference. They couldn't truly hear it.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. Bring these two stories together. What are they telling us, really?
Well, they paint this really comprehensive picture, I think. The difficulty we feel just trying to keep a simple rule, like in the first story.
Which already feels hard enough.
Right. It isn't just about lacking willpower in the moment. Story 2 suggests it's connected to these incredibly deep-seated habits. Patterns may be formed over lifetimes, metaphorically speaking.
The snake, the monkey, the astrologer.
Yeah. And fueled by these incredibly powerful, relentless internal forces. Passion's fire, hatred's grip, delusion's net, and craving's unfillable river, which were laid out so vividly in that second verse.
So our day-to-day struggles with self-control or trying to change, they're not just superficial failures. They're potentially linked to ancient patterns and these fundamental driving energies within us.
Exactly. It reframes the struggle, doesn't it? It's not just you being weak. You're potentially contending with conditioning built up over vast timescales and these very powerful inherent psychological forces.
In thinking about modern life, you can see these analogies everywhere, can't you? That constant pull towards the next purchase, the next click, the next hit of dopamine that's craving's river, always demanding to be filled.
Or that flash of anger, that resentment that just grips you and won't let go when someone cuts you off in traffic. There's hatred's grab.
Right. Or just being caught up in endless distractions, unable to focus on what really matters. Delusion's net may be fueled by those modern forms of animal talks, like endless social media scrolling or gossip.
And that inner fire of wanting, of passion, driving so much consumer culture, so much relationship drama.
It resonates. And that idea about past lives, even if you take it purely metaphorically, it highlights just how deeply ingrained our habits and reactions can become. Why change feels so hard and takes so long.
It suggests that really fundamental change isn't likely to be a quick fix. It's more like, well, like redirecting a river or untangling a vast net or learning to dampen that internal fire. It requires sustained effort, awareness, and maybe a different kind of understanding of what you're up against.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, these ancient commentaries give us this perspective. Self-control is hard because we're dealing with unrestrained evil natures, greed, and aversion.
And these aren't just abstract ideas. They're tied to incredibly deep habits and manifest as powerful internal forces. Passion, like an unceasing fire. Hatred, like an absolute grip. Delusion, like a binding net. And craving, like an unfillable river.
These forces act as constant obstacles, making it genuinely difficult to even hear, let alone act upon, wisdom that could lead to change.
They really highlight the sheer scale of the internal challenge.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If, as these texts suggest, habits from maybe 500 lifetimes ago could still show up as simple distraction today.
And if our minds have been conditioned by potentially eons of focusing only on animal talks, the mundane, the superficial,
Then how much conscious, sustained effort does it truly take to change our ingrained patterns? What does it really mean to try and overcome being, as the text puts it, an unrestrained evil nature, when the roots might go that deep, and those internal fires, grabs, nets, and rivers are so persistent?
how does contemplating that scale, that depth of conditioning, maybe change how you approach your own efforts towards self-awareness and transformation? Something to think about.